Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Sundays with David LaFell, sans David LaFell. The doctor is away, but we are carrying on without him, and we are going to continue the film that we started showing you last week. It was a portrait demonstration of Joanne Manji. So we have about 20 minutes left on that, and of course we may get a surprise visit from David. But we also have another video to follow that one. And it was a program that is, I know, close to all of our hearts. And it was sparked by a question by Mirka from the UK. And Mirka wanted to know whether or not the languages of painting and drawing were interchangeable. And so it's a really interesting and I think really essential topic about the differences between the two languages. And as you know, I've written a book called The Language of Drawing, and David's book called An Artist Teaches really talks about the language of painting and all the elements in painting. And so it's a really vital discussion to have. And again, you can write questions in. Jackie is here with us today, and she is going to field these questions and give them to me if I'm the only one on here to answer, or David if he pops in. So we don't really know. But anyway, and I just would love to invite you to check out our figure workshop, which is coming up this month. And so it's the 24th through the 27th. And we are offering the first morning of the 24th as a free morning. And it's going to be, I think, a really fabulous morning. And so I hope that regardless, you can all join us for that morning. And then we are going to continue the actual workshop that afternoon and then the following 3 mornings. So it's the 24th through the 27th. And the first day will be 6 hours, but the following days will have 3 hours each day. So anyway, please check it out. Go to brightlightfineart.com. We've really kept it reasonable. We put our whole hearts and souls into it. We've done some wonderful demonstrations, and we're going to be up for answering all kinds of questions that you have about figure painting. We also have included a couple of other mediums, and I think that's important for you to realize that this knowledge and this understanding is not specific to a particular medium. So we have demonstrations in oil, pastel, and watercolor. And so I think that you'll get a lot out of it, and it is definitely worth the money. So please check it out, www.brightlightfineart.com. Anyway, so I think that we're ready to continue with our video from last week, the demonstration of Joanne Manji. So John, okay, let's see. Oh, you want me to start again? Really? Okay. Okay, I think I'm supposed to start all over again. Is that right, John? Okay, I guess it is. All right, good morning and welcome to Sundays with David LaFell, the painting doctor. The painting doctor is away. He might pop in today, as he did last week. But what we are doing is we are continuing last week's video, which is a portrait demonstration of Joanne Manji. So we backed it up a little bit, so it starts right with when David puts the light on the face. So it's really amazing to see how quickly he gets a likeness in terms of the bone structure. So it really is quite a lesson in what's essential to be putting into a portrait. And then we have a video after that, and it's one of our favorite videos, really, the programs, because it talks about the differences between the languages of painting and drawing. And the actual title of the program is, Are They Interchangeable? The languages of painting and drawing interchangeable. And so often when people have difficulty in their paintings or in their drawings, it's because they're actually using the wrong language. So I think it's essential to know what the language is so that you know if you're actually using the correct language at the right time. Anyway, so we have that as our next video, and whatever we don't finish today, we'll continue next week. So anyway, we hope you appreciate what we're doing. I'm hoping David pops in because I'd love to see him. And please send in your questions. Jackie's here with us today, and she's going to give me the questions or give David the questions if he's on screen. Anyway, so John, if we're ready. Okay, so we're having a little trouble with the start time. So one thing too I want to talk about is our figure demonstration that we have coming up. And so it's from June 24th through the 27th. And this time we've done things a little bit differently. So we thought that what would be great is that the first day we would have the first morning actually a free morning and open to anyone. And so we're going to have a PowerPoint presentation talking about a lot of different images. And we're also going to have an actual demonstration. And so Stacy is going to be demonstrating. So it's going to be quite a wonderful morning. And our gift to you, and then of course hoping that that will entice you guys to actually take the workshop. So, and for all those who have signed up for the workshop, then we continue that afternoon, June 24th. And with a demonstration by David, and it is really a fabulous demonstration. He starts with a painting idea that he had for a nude, a finished painting, and he had a slightly different idea about what to do with it. And so you'll see him do something a little bit different with this figure demonstration, and it was really just fantastic and should really inspire you to put paint on a canvas. Then the next 3 mornings, we have a lot of demonstrations set up for you guys. So anyway, so it in not only in oil, but also in pastel and watercolor. So I think that you'll begin to see that it's possible to have this knowledge that will allow you to work in any medium at all. And so, anyways, that's June 24th through the 27th. Just go to brightlightfineart.com and you'll get all the details and you can sign up. So we have some images from some of the demonstrations that we're doing. And anyway, it should be great fun. We are really hoping that you'll join us. And I think, John, we're ready to go.
So, any other questions?
Yes, people are wanting you to stop talking. Joanne.
What?
People are saying let him paint.
Oh.
Stop talking.
Stop talking. All right, shut up then.
Let's see, and somebody was concerned that they would love to see you paint the mouth. I told them you usually paint
the
that
mouth.
last. Yeah.
Legs. I think.
Well, okay, so Mihaela is saying, do you make brush strokes? He said up and down, sideways. Do you ever make down, up, from down to an upward movement to achieve a certain direction of brush stroke?
Well, you have 2 basic brush strokes, and you're either painting form or direction. So this way, painting this way would be direction. Painting across the form is form. So this would be direction, and this would be form. So those are your 2 basic brush strokes that you're trying. What you're trying to describe is either form or direction. And then there are just brush strokes that you feel are above and beyond form, which is hard to kind of describe. Just that you feel something goes in a particular manner.
Oh, and then Beth said that maybe you could come back later for an interview.
Who said that?
Joanne.
What?
So Beth is saying that maybe Joanne could come back later for an interview.
For what? Oh, you mean shut up. Shut up now. Come back 2 weeks from today. When nobody will be here. I get it.
And by the way, just while everybody's watching, we are going to take a little hiatus next week, but then we'll resume the next week.
Yes, we're going to Oklahoma.
For an art show, so.
So the difference between paintings of the 1600s, 1700s, up until the 19th century, the people basically, the painters basically painted, people basically painted form. And so the early paintings, let's say, the Dutch painters, all the painters of that period painted form, and the preponderance of their brushstrokes went across. And then came John Singer Sargent and the 19th century painters, and they wanted to be bravura. So they painted, this way you can only make relatively short brushstrokes, but this way you can make long brushstrokes. So instead of form, they painted direction, which gave them that zippity-doo-dah feeling of virtuosity. And their people tend to, like Sargent or Zorn, Baldini, Celia Beau, their people tend to look more, or less solid, I should say, less solid and not quite grounded because of the wanting to make, or to be known as virtuosic painters. So here, it's like putting down light and color and paint, so you have paint to paint with. And then you see, here it drifts off, so I would ease off on the brush, you see, to let this kind of get into the shadow.
John, can you pause the video 1 second? So there's one question about what the skin color is. And so David's mixing yellow ochre, Venetian red, and white, flake white. Okay, you can resume.
So the idea is to put down paint that looks good and have paint to paint with and get this thrust forward. Did you say somebody wanted to see me paint a mouth, Sharon?
Yeah.
Why? Why is a mouth so difficult? The thing, and then if something gets softer or eases, you just ease off on the brush.
Wow. Yeah.
So that you're using the ground to get, you see, a different kind of cooler color. So painting a mouth, all you're trying to do when you paint a mouth is to make a lot of brush strokes that look like a mouth. You see? So here, so with one color on your brush and just easing off on it. And then your anchoring points would be, the cheekbone, the light on the cheekbone, the tip of the nose, like you see, and letting the thing kind of evolve as a painting. And just so really what you're trying to do, which I think is where a lot of people misunderstand, is you're trying to use your colors and your values to depict the topography, not just matching values again as or copying values, which may be where you start out, but you're using your values to depict the topography, so that how far this comes out or this goes back, this light comes up to the bridge of the nose, and then trickles over to the other side with a little bit of light coming out here. So if you get your values right, then the topography is right, and it'll look like the person you're painting. So you're not trying to match what you're seeing, you're trying to use this to depict how far, all the ins and outs of the topography. So you're getting started. So that's getting started, and then maybe using some of your cooler background color, which we don't have, to show this some of the raw umber that I started with, the underpart of the cheekbone, how that relates, the zygomatic arch, and all this stuff happening here and down the lower part of the face, which of course is cooler as it turns under, and then coming back the mouth, and then separating the jaw from the neck. So basically you have all the essentials of what's happening.
And Joanne, Catherine Galbraith is saying that she loves hearing your comments and saying that you're quite an accomplished, recognized artist yourself, and she finds your comments and questions insightful. And
I love her.
And David, Liza is a new member of the Bright Light Fine Art from India, and she's wanting to know if it's possible to start later in life and still become a good painter.
Yeah, time has nothing to do with, it doesn't take any special coordination to be, be a painter. It just requires understanding, and it doesn't matter how late you start in life.
So would you feel rushed if you just kind of put a little color for the mouth?
What, honey?
Would you feel rushed if you put a little color for the mouth so that my critics will be happy? Because they're going to blame me for you not doing it.
Well, I don't see there's no big deal about it.
Well, for you.
doing the mound. We had a minute left.
And just to say that there have been so many people tuning in, more from North Carolina, India, Pennsylvania, the UK also, Michigan, Colorado, Wyoming, California, Long Island, and Wisconsin. So all over the place.
Uh-huh. Wow. Quite an audience. So that as a certain anchoring point, like the cheekbone, the light where the nose bone breaks out from under the brow ridge, the highlight on the nose, the mouth.
And Ojai,
So-
California.
Yeah, so here, as I said, it's a hard edge, so this would be a soft edge. Here, a hard edge. Here, you see, that's the basic. To try to understand, there really is everything you do in a painting is the basics. I used to have students coming to me at the league and say, when I get the basics, then I can come study with you. And I would say, it's all basics. Everything you do is the basics. There is nothing else. You're always doing basic stuff. It's, again, making something simple into something divisive and complicated. So, just like doing the whole painting with one brush. So it's just near to far all the time. So you see, mouth, there's nothing to it. Why make it complicated?
It's amazing.
This is a hard edge here, this is a soft edge. You're just following something that nature tells you this is what takes place. So you just soften your brush stroke. You see, if it's something harder, you have a faster turn. So here, like this, wants to trickle over. It's like a little softer to get it to go to the other side, and then the insertion of the bone interrupts that and wants to come in. So you're just following what's there. And if you wanted as a reflected light, then that's coming from this side, but it has to keep the shadow, very soft. And as I said, if you wanted to less tension down here, you could bring the reflected light, follow this down to this little jowl here, so it'd be a little stronger. So this It kind of repeats down here.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
so it's all the basics. It's all very simple. And what you're doing is translating what you're seeing. You're translating what you're seeing into brushstrokes, just like translating English to French or French to English or any language. You're making brushstrokes to describe the topography as you're seeing it. And as I said, so coming out to damn, it's one color I didn't do yesterday. But as you would, so I could make, this as a bring that. Come on, baby. Simple. Very simple. Just make this a little bit stronger as that to bring this closer. And the hair. And that's so you're trying to do stuff meaningfully. So you could put a footnote on the bottom of your painting saying, that's the way it looked to me. Okay.
Wow.
So that's how I start. That's how I start a painting. I hope you all can benefit from it. It's as a trying to make brush strokes and paint strokes, color that really are descriptive and meaningful, as if your canvas was this wide rather than that wide. So I will see you or speak to you in 2 weeks when we get back from the Prix de West show at the National Cowboy Heritage Museum in Oklahoma City.
Okay, so I think, John, are we ready for the second video? So anyway, I know that since David is answering questions during the film itself, you most likely don't really have new questions, but if you do, please write them in. Jackie is available to feed the questions to me and to David if he happens to pop in. So we have a second film lined up. And as I said in the very beginning, is the reason that we picked this film is that we feel that it's one of the most important films that David has done. So it's on the languages of both painting and drawing and how they really are not interchangeable. So anyway, so enjoy this second part of the program and maybe David will pop in. So we've actually both have earned our honorary doctorates. And so you really have a doctor here teaching you every week. The program today, I think, is going to be it's really one of the most fundamental things that an artist needs to know is really what the language of drawing is and the language of painting. And so there was an interesting question from Mirka about whether or not those the solutions in drawing could be used in painting, and the ones in painting could be used in drawing. Are they interchangeable? Well, we thought it was a great idea, and so we decided to make a whole program on it. So this is for you, Mirka. And just to remind you that we've been hard at work getting our films ready for the portrait workshop that we're doing in January. So it starts January 7th, goes through the 10th. If you want to get more information, I know a lot of you already signed up. Thank you. And I think it's really going to be special. So it starts on the 7th. You can find out more information on brightlightfineart.com. And so we have a drawing by David of his daughter Melissa when she was quite young. And there are two different examples which I did post. So one is more of a drawing, one is more of a painting drawing. And so he'll talk about that. He has a painting here, also a portrait of a woman. And we also have a drawing by Nikolai Feshin that David might refer to as well in terms of the language of drawing. So we have a few questions from last week. If you guys want me to say hello and to know you're out there, please just say hello, ask a question, anything. I'll be relaying David's questions to him for you. We're glad you're here. I hope everybody is healthy and safe and having wonderful holidays. And we're happy you're here. And thank you for being here. Okay.
Yes. So we'll start out with the questions from last week.
Yes.
Finish off last week's program.
Okay. So Madeline is wondering, can you paint both form and direction in one plane? Can one plane have brushstrokes that are describing form as well as direction?
Okay. Well, as I think I started out saying last week or the week before, form is when you go across a plane. So painting across is always form, and painting along is direction. So this would be direction, this would be form. Now, you don't have to paint every single brushstroke going across to get a feeling of form, or have every brushstroke going along to provide direction. It just would be which stands out the most. And of course, sometimes in painting, seeing the direction of the brushstroke, especially if there's material, a shirt, a dress, something covering the form, then that becomes an interesting problem. For example, if you have a lot of wrinkles going this way, the tendency, as I said, it was last week, painting the nose with a brushstroke going this way, one long brushstroke as opposed to howsoever many brushstrokes going across. So it's really a question of which stands out the most. But my feeling, for example, I gave an example of my teacher painting the cheekbone with a lot of brushstrokes, all of his brushstrokes going this way, the direction, and I felt it should go this way, the form. But what I have come to in my own work is that if I were painting the same plane today, I would have this feeling of the form, but the highlight giving the direction. So again, one of the things that I always felt was outstanding about Rembrandt was he got that feeling of both form and direction in his work, and I always felt that before I knew anything, somehow that registered on a subconscious level, and then, as I said, the more I learned and worked, it just seemed that he was just incredible, the way he intuitively or thought about it, but just seemed to get a feeling of both form and direction. At the same time, of course, mostly the feeling of solidity and weight, which I mentioned. In fact, interestingly enough, the Rembrandt self-portrait that we talked about at the Frick, his garments, the gold garment, yellow garment that he was wearing, almost all the brushstrokes, if not all the brushstrokes are verticals, going down, 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 all the way. And it would sort of contradict that feeling of getting weight and solidity to himself in the pose, but at the same time, it still has that feeling that you're looking at someone who's solid, who has weight. So in spite of the fact that the whole chest and torso portion of it is painted with vertical strokes, directional strokes, it still has that feeling of weight to it. And I have to say, in my own mind, I've always had that little personal critique of it. So in my own work, if I'm painting someone with a lot of vertical folds in their shirt or what they're wearing, dress, bodice, I would paint some of those vertical folds with horizontal brushstrokes in the light. You know, maybe the shadow would have a nice vertical shadow if there was one, but in the light, whatever folds, I would have any brushstrokes showing. I would have brushstrokes emphasizing the horizontal rather than the vertical. But as I said, that's the one thing that always puzzled me looking at that Rembrandt self-portrait at the Frick, even though, you know, as I said, it's just such an incredible, incredible painting. But I don't think a painting is a series of problem-solving decisions, and there can always be alternative ways to do something. So, but it all works. And so, anyhow, to answer the question, that's how I think about it, and things that you can consider in terms of how many brushstrokes are showing form, how many brushstrokes are showing direction. As I said, so the preponderance of Rembrandt in that whole period, 17th, 18th, 19th, and maybe early 20th century, painting form versus Sargent, Zorn, Boldini, painting direction. Ultimately, it's what one wants to express in one's painting. There's no right or wrong unless you're getting something that you don't want to get by not understanding the difference between painting form and painting direction. But if you understand that, then it's really what you choose to express in what you're painting, as I said, rather than one being a right way and one being a wrong way.
Okay, great. And Blanca is wondering if there's a big difference in terms of how paint goes down onto a smooth surface or a rough surface.
Well, there is a difference, yes. Not only in how it goes down, but how it looks. Depending on the tactile quality of what you're painting, whether it's a portrait or a still life, if the texture of the canvas overrides the tactile quality that you're trying to express, then of course it is a problem. So if the surface of the canvas is very rough and you're trying to give something the appearance of a very smooth, satiny finish, young skin or varnished wood, let's say, or the surface of a particular object, if the surface you're working on overrides the tactile quality that you're trying to portray, that becomes a problem. Usually, the rougher the surface of the canvas one uses, it generally depends on size. So the rougher the canvas texture, the more paint it'll hold. So that would be for a large painting, and whereas a smoother, finer weave or finer finish, if you're doing it yourself, would be for smaller, a smaller canvas. So but essentially it's really up to you guys as painters to either make your own canvas to the desired finish, or even if you buy a commercial canvas, to give it a coat or two of white lead to achieve the finish.
Okay, I think maybe we have David and Melissa joining in. Do we, John? There they are.
You on?
You're on, and we can hear you.
Oh.
So there's you right here.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Great. So we're into the second video now,
Oh.
where you're answering some previous questions. Welcome to the show. So I hope everybody's finding us. I know
Welcome
we've
to
had
our
a few
meal.
Yes.
technical glitches this morning, but hopefully, I'm not sure quite what happened. And Jackie's there. She's waving hello.
Oh, you're up on your.
Jackie's over. See
Oh.
Jackie right there?
You're right. You're upstairs, Sherry.
Yes.
Yes, it was last week.
What?
Yeah, that's where because she's on her computer up there.
Yes. Okay. Well.
Okay. So I know David has a couple of. He wants to respond to some questions from last week.
Yes.
So.
As soon as I can find them.
We have an iPad, my laptop, and my phone here, so
You're technically
we're ready.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, everybody was really, I think, loving the demonstration of Joanne, and of course, probably wishing it went longer.
Right.
And now it's so hard for me to watch the older videos because the video quality is so different from what we have now.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Did the demonstration of Joanne finish?
Yes, yes. We're started on the second film.
Oh, the one with the language of drawing and painting?
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay. Well, I wanted to respond
to a couple of questions and comments from last year.
Last
Last week, I'm sorry.
Was that-
Ryan, who had, quite an interesting statement, and it really is a tribute to his thinking that he's such a bright person. But I wanted to say to him that this duality that he spoke about, light and shadow, good and evil, order and chaos, is really a semantic construct. And that what's important, not only Ryan, but everybody, is to the statement that I've made, to define is to limit. Defining, and we use words to define, is a limitation. Once we have the words and the conclusions, we no longer question anything. So that is really the crux of the problem, losing or restraining the ability to ask questions because one has reached a conclusion, and the words light, shadow, whatever words we want to use, conclude in our mind that we understand something, we know something, we have words and thoughts to back up what we believe. And we lose the so-called innocence of the child, the wonderment. So every day becomes the same day as the past day because of these limitations. Whereas the innocence of a child, everything is a wonder. Everything is new and fresh. And life, of course, is just wonderful seen through those eyes. But by defining something or drawing conclusions, which is different than understanding something, we limit ourselves. So, and our words define our persona, our character. So what I would say to Ryan, as well as to everybody listening, think instead, or put yourself instead in the Raina Marie Rilke's advice to a young poet, to treat all the questions as if they were secrets in a locked room, and that you don't really want answers, you want understanding. So as I said, so understanding, like a conceptualizing, is limitless. You're always in a state of wonder, which in a sense leads me to the next comment, trying to get the questions on my iPad. Oh, there. Which was from Maria Brenner. And she...
Marla.
What?
Marla Brenner.
Can I just say something? Some people are on the bright light under the post where it says we're going live soon. And there's a bunch of people who still aren't seeing it on Facebook. How many people do you have commenting? Like, you have people commenting live that are there? You want to?
Jackie's monitoring it.
Yes, they are.
Okay, so there's some of us who can't get on. So just in case you were like, how come there's only like this many people? That's
There's going to be a tape of this that people can
yeah.
for 24 hours.
Yeah, okay, just wanted to.
So, okay, so Maria asked, something about closed shadows and open shadows. And I think, Maria, that you miss, if you are one of the audience, I think you misunderstood, because there is really no such thing, or I've never mentioned open shadows or closed shadows. So I don't really understand what you're referring to. Speaking of open and closed, I'm usually speaking of the edges rather than shadow. And what I remember from last week, well, possibly the week before, was saying, and somehow I think even Sherry might have said the same thing last week, that since we look at light, we can make all the shadows in a painting, regardless of the local color in the light, the same color, just changing the value. And everyone looking at the painting will accept it, because ordinarily and ordinary or people don't look at shadow, they look at light. So that would be one way to paint shadows, and the other would be to slightly adjust the color of the shadow to admit of the local color in the light. But as I said, I have never talked about open shadows or closed shadows. So if that makes more sense to you, or it's not clear, you can rephrase your question. And Sven mentioned how when I started painting, it seems like I'm fondling the paint, which is, in a sense, an interesting description, Sven. But it is feeling my way into the painting slowly and letting my subject matter come to me and tell me what needs to be done. It's really a dialogue with what I'm observing and the feeling at the end of my brush on the canvas with the paint, the medium on it, and just easing my way like an athlete warming up, easing my way mentally and physically into the painting, being very receptive rather than aggressive. So that was a lovely description. I know other people have said I seem to be caressing the paint, and that also, I think, is an apt description of what I'm going through as I begin, and actually through the entire painting, of being receptive rather than aggressive, not, as I said, maintaining a dialogue between the painting and the subject matter, and almost that I myself am a vehicle, that it's coming through. Not that I want that to sound mystical, but it's just the feeling, getting back to Ryan's statement of not knowing, of being open, excuse me, not knowing what is going to unfold, but just enjoying the process, not having conclusions or semantic definitions in my head, what I'm supposed to be doing or not doing. So it's all all these seemingly unrelated questions all are tied together, which is understanding. So understanding is very different from drawing conclusions and defining something. And it's hard to see outside.
Want me to,
Oh,
want me to read it?
just one more. Oh,
And I'll do a jig as we take a little intermission.
Yeah. Oh, and Tina Hickson mentioned her idea of getting better at painting is being able to elicit a response, an emotional response from whoever's looking at her work, which is quite notable. But at the same time, Tina, I would say the purpose of painting, a painting, is understanding. Not only understanding painting, but understanding oneself. To me, that's what painting ultimately is about. Just as any activity, one participates in life, or life itself, is really trying to become more aware, have more understanding, and that life is a problem-solving discipline, and what you're trying to understand is what it's about, what we are as a self-awareness, paying attention, being innocent like a child. I'm pressing on it so it doesn't go blank.
Oh.
So whatever expression or emotional you elicit from an audience will come through because of who and what you are as a person. That it's an unself-conscious thing that happens when you're just trying to do a good painting by understanding the whole discipline, the problems of the discipline, that the kind of person you are, when you sort of take a kind of an abrupt turn, I was thinking, when you go, as I've said, go to a museum and look at paintings, as you become more sensitive, and as a painter, artist, you begin to see the person behind the painting, whether they were just showing off, trying to be somebody, what they understood, what they didn't understand. So it's a question of understanding, which, as I said in the beginning, is different than just trying to accumulate knowledge. Accumulation, which is kind of the sin of our society, which has kind of gone insane. It's accumulation versus understanding today, that we admire accumulation rather than understanding. And there's in a sense, a paucity of empathy amongst people today. People text and have quarrels texting rather than actually confronting a person. And, we've all seen people in restaurants, couples, each on their cell phone talking to somebody else. So while technology has a great many advantages, it has outstripped human relations and interpersonal empathy in relations. And people are still killing each other all over the planet mindlessly for no reason other than accumulation. We can send rockets to Mars. Now they're talking about Venus. When we're destroying the planet that we live on mindlessly. So all this is part of painting and understanding rather than accumulating. As I said, though all the people who paint, each one of the myriad thousands of people who paint pictures, each has their own personal motivations to do it. But I always painted to try to understand what it meant, what painting as an entire discipline meant. I mean, of course, as I mentioned, I entered shows, I tried for prizes when I was younger,
David,
but always,
sweetheart, David, we're having the same problem. I thought you guys were going to stream from your room. We're getting a lot of background noise.
yeah, it'll stop soon. It's just people walking by with supplies, cleaning the rooms, etc. Is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, when that happens, if you can stop, because it's hard to hear
okay.
you.
And
Okay.
and one last thing, as Sunday said, which was in Sunday art, art is human expression, not what has been done before. So I thought that was a very pithy comment. And Marcia Brenner also asked if I used medium when I'm blocking in the painting. And Marcia, I also put a little medium in each color as I lay out my palette. And in the beginning of the painting, of course, so that the paint glides more freely, I do use more medium. But as the painting progresses and there's more paint to move around, then I don't, the more paint, the less medium. So, but you have to have something on your surface to manipulate. So in the beginning on a canvas, just starting, the medium helps facilitate your thinking. And as I said, later on, much less medium, if any, just because you have paint to manipulate, which is important, that you must have paint on your surface that you can manipulate, which is the act of painting, that sensual quality, which is delightful, feeling the paint, etc. And enables you to make brushstrokes that are descriptive and meaningful. And I think that pretty much answers and I just also have to say Timothy Shepard, who's wrote, I would respond to why you painting like that? It's all been done before. And he said, why do you get out of bed? It's all been done before. Why do you eat, etc. I thought that was really a great way to answer the question, why do you paint like that? It's all been done before. But hopefully what I've just said with the innocence of a child, that gives life its freshness, whereas drawing conclusions and defining is just the opposite. So whether the light is different than shadow or chaos, it relates to order, good to evil, bad. You see, those are verbal conclusions. And as I said earlier, the words define our personality. So to pay attention to our vocabulary, how we're using it, who we're talking to. In other words, cultivate awareness and empathy. And that's it for today for me,
Well,
Sherry.
we're all thrilled that you joined in, David,
Yeah,
and answered those questions. And I guess we'll continue with our film then.
I think you look beautiful, honey. I do miss you. Yeah. All right.
I miss
Continue with the program,
you.
and
Okay.
we'll may join in again with some more
Generally speaking,
pithy comments.
as I said, the rougher the surface, the more obtrusive it gets to be. So if that overrides what you're trying to express, then that in and of itself you can see as a problem. So I mean, we generally start out with a medium rough canvas, but giving it 3 coats of white lead gets the kind of finish that for the size that I generally work or Sherry generally works, it's what we want. It's what we can work with. I just started a portrait of Sherry, speaking of that, on a canvas that I didn't prepare. Someone prepared for me, and it's just a wee bit rougher than what I would normally finish my own canvases with. So it just takes a little bit more paint on it to get it to the kind of ease of handling that I've gotten used to over the years. So, but that's I hope answers your question,
Okay. I think that was a
Bianca.
great answer. A great answer. Lisa is saying that in An Artist Teaches, you talk about having the background lighter on the light side of the object, the background behind it, and just wondered if you could talk a little bit about that.
Okay. Lisa, I think what I was speaking about was lightening the background just against, not the entire background, but just the area adjacent to the light plane. So if this is the light's coming in from this side, so the background, just to take the eye away from that edge, so it's not as hard an edge as you might have. It doesn't call attention to it. The idea, of course, in painting form is not to create the edges as a place of focus. I think early on, the idea mistakenly was that if you painted a real nice dark against that light, the light would really have a lot of punch and jump out of the background. But as I said, that's kind of a mistaken idea. So by lightening whatever whether it's person, portrait or vase or piece of fruit, by lightening the edge, creating just like a little feeling of the light haloing off the surface, but essentially not making that edge so strong that the eye goes to the edge, so that the focus is inside, just like softening the edge between the light and the shadow doesn't give the eye anything to focus on. So I think that's what I was referring to when I said lightening the edge on the in the background against the light side. So the purpose of that, as I just try to say, Lisa, is if you're painting form, you want the focus to be on the interior. That's how you get the illusion of form with highlights or details, texture, paint, and by just very slightly, depending on how subtle you want it to be, lightening that dark edge where the light starts, just it has the effect, as I said, not only of just rather than softening the light, softening the background, getting the feeling of the light, hailing off, takes the eye away from the edge. So it's that was the purpose of it, rather than, as I say, just lightening the whole background on the light side. So I hope that's clear.
And David was wondering if you always work from life, and when you come back to a painting the next day, do you oil it out?
Well, I would say, David, that over the years that I've been painting, I have to say about maybe 95% of everything I've done from life. I have, one time I did a painting from a drawing just for the fun of it. And of course I've done portraits of deceased people, commissioned portraits of deceased people, where I had to work from photographs. But as I said, a good 95%, and my preference is always to work from life. So yes, that is. It's more challenging. Oh, and of course, when I was doing illustration, album covers and book jackets and the like, I had to work from photographs. The people, the artists, the cover artists of the record covers and etc. Book jackets. I, would either get photographs from the art directors' agencies or go to the New York Library and they had a great extensive morgue, as it was called, morgue collection. You could get great reference material. So in cases like that, of course, obviously I had to work from photographs, but as I said, aside from that, I've always worked from life. What was the second part of the question? Should I know that?
And do you
oiling out?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't necessarily always oil out the second day I'm working on a painting. It depends on how dried in the colors are, and if there's no need to oil out, if there's enough surface and gloss, let's say, or richness of the surface, nothing is sunk in, then I won't oil out. Or in some cases, I'll oil out the parts that have sunken in, but not the parts that don't need it. So it's necessary, of course, if something dries in, sinks in, and it's matte, you can't see the true color or the true value. Then I put a little Marigé on a brush or a cloth and rub it over the surface
before I start to work.
Okay. And Saul is wondering what you think of Nelson Shanks's work.
Oh, Nelson Shanks. Well, not very much. I mean, I have to say, Nelson did fabulous. I mean, you could look at his portraits of the Pope, Princess Diana. They're really, he could paint. I mean, I can't say anything bad that he can't do this. The Pope, the Princess, other commissioned portraits, the clients, people were, I'm sure, ultimately satisfied, but I don't find them particularly personally engaging. Maybe they're just too rendered out, too painted out, and, without getting into anything that I know about Nelson personally, it's just not my field of painting. It's more rendering rather than sculptural painting, and so that's essentially what I feel. He did the best he could with what he had, but it's just not my thing. As I said, there's no emotional engagement I find in his work. It's just technically skilled work, labor intensive. That's my opinion. That's what I think.
And I can't quite read my writing, so I'm not sure who asked this question, but wanted to know about blending when you're painting.
Well, it's almost a part of the last.
It could be John. It could be John.
Part of the last question. So Nelson, along with, of course, a whole school of painters working today, sight-size, academy trained painters, the Florence School, Richard Lack, et al., Nelson, what was it called, the Incaminati?
Yes, Studio Incaminati.
Studio Incaminati. Yeah, they're all what I call renderers, kind of almost a lead into Mirka's question in some sense today. It's a whole different approach to painting as opposed to what let's say my outlook on painting, which is from a sculptural point of view, painting form in terms of planes rather than blending. So what that school thinks of blending, soft passages, like shading with a pencil, very, very smooth transition from darker to lighter. It's a whole different way, not only of working, but prior to working that way, to seeing that way, seeing everything in terms of smooth, endless transitions rather than broad sculptural, seeing planes and trying to sculpt with the paint. So to me, I think I pointed out when I showed
I guess it was last week, the one of my granddaughter, of just letting one piece of paint melt by just how you put the paint down, feeling the paint with you, so that you just let it melt into a previous piece of paint, as opposed to what I would call blending or rendering, where you're just brushing back and forth, till you lose the edges between this value and that value. I try to do it with just one or two simple brush strokes, so that it's still making brush strokes in painting rather than using fingers and wrist to blend something out. But as I said, it's not only the technique, the technique is an expression of the people who are using that technique, how they see visually, how they see life. It's very hard to divorce, nigh impossible to divorce the painter from the paintings, regardless of what stage, whether you're a so-called beginner or a professional. The psychology that leads one person to one way of putting paint down versus the psychology of a second person putting it down differently, seeing differently, it's all one piece. So that's interesting. What's good for, like this, I just thought of the old saying, what's sauce for the goose may not be sauce for the gander. So it's just a whole different thing. But to me, I like to just let the paint do the work, so to speak. That's my personal outlook of letting the paint and the brush do everything rather than blending fingers and wrist. So I would say that what I call the blending rendering school is a lot of physical effort to get that kind of smoothness, whereas in the more sculptural type of painting, it's less physical effort, and it's more, like I said, it's look here, don't look here. Now you see it, now you don't. So that you can soften something by distracting from it. How soft this is depends on how much attention this has here. So it's a very different, not only technically, it's a very different outlook. It's not just how soft this is or how soft you want it to appear, but making something over here or over here, wherever, away from it to make it look even softer than it necessarily is, you see. So it's more mentation rather than physical effort. That sounds, of course, very self-serving, but it is the way it is. I was going to say it's the way I think about it. That's the way it is. It's like, look here, don't look here. This doesn't have to be ultimately so smooth if you can pull the eye, that the eye sees that peripherally, but you have something here that's more interesting to look at, if you understand. So
that's the fun of it, is like, it's not just the doing of it, it's seeing the whole thing, that this works because this works. You see, if this didn't work, this wouldn't work as well. It's a dance. It's a beautiful, fun dance to have.
Okay, yeah, that's all the questions we have from last week, but do you want to start talking about?
Okay, yes.
We had a lot of new questions.
Do you want to restate Merica's question then, or what her comment?
Yes, so essentially, Mirka was asking if you could use drawing solutions in painting, you know, that they are two different languages, but can you use the solutions from one language in the other language? And we do have a lot of questions
New questions?
this morning, yeah. So,
Okay. What should I go to first?
let's see. Well, I mean, there was one quick question from Sandy. She didn't really know what oiling out means. So you might just,
okay.
just say
Sandy. This is Sandy Cook?
No, another Sandy.
Another Sandy. Oiling out, what it means is, and where it's used, some colors absorb oil more than other colors, and they dry matte. For example, ivory black or colors mixed with ivory black. Ivory black, the pigment itself is, let's say the pigment itself is very porous, so you can grind it, and it just keeps drinking oil. And if you use ivory black or colors mixed with ivory black, just for an example, and work it on your surface, the next morning, generally it's going to dry matte. In other words, it won't have any kind of sheen or gloss to it. So, and other colors, like some of the earth colors, do the same thing. They absorb oil, different pigments have a different rate of absorption. So that certain pigments drink the oil, so to speak. So when you look at your painting the next day, there'll be passages that are glossy, semi-glossy, or sunk, what's called sunk in. The oil sinks into them, and they have this matte quality. And when they do that, the effect is you can't actually tell what the color is or the value is. So oiling out is a process of putting some medium. Some people use retouch varnish, which is a weak solution of Damar varnish in solvent, and they just put it over the whole surface so it looks fresh and glossy, and then they can see where to go next in their painting. Of course, using Marigé, which I do, which reticulates with Damar, and for other reasons I don't particularly, and never have used Damar varnish, retouch varnish.
All right, this is where we had to stop it this week. I know we had a few technical glitches. You know, you have to bear with us. But we're trying to do something very unusual for you guys, which is to give you the opportunity to revisit an old program, have David come in and answer some of the questions that you, like if there are questions from this week that we didn't get to or didn't see, then David might pop in next week and answer these questions. Anyway, so We are doing this because we know that you guys are getting used to hearing David's wisdom every week. And we, even though he's on vacation, we wanted to see if we could keep sharing that with you. So anyway, and again, just to remind you that we are really wrapping up our figure workshop, and that's going to start June 24th through the 27th. There is a free morning on June 24th, and so we really would love it if all of you joined us. And we've made the workshop very reasonable, so we hope that you will join us for the workshop. I think that you'll get a lot out of it. You certainly will get your money's worth for sure. Anyway, I want to thank Jackie for helping relay some of the questions, and also John for navigating this strange technical thing that we went through this morning. Anyway, but we will continue on this film next week. And so we hope to see you guys next week. And we will also post both last week's program and this week's program so that you'll be able to watch his demonstration from beginning to end. And I know there was some glitch and some people didn't tune in early enough, but anyway, but we want to make sure that you'll see it. And of course you can ask questions, and we'll try to retrieve those and get those answered next week. Anyway, thank you guys for tuning in. I'm sure it was from all over the world, and we miss you, and hope to see you guys next week for Sundays with David LaFell, the painting doctor.